Welcome to Understanding the Bible with Pastor Stephen. Today we're going to be talking about the solar eclipse. So this is episode 15, which is Signs and Wonders and the Solar Eclipse. So if you're listening to this podcast before April 8th, or before the eclipse on April 8th, 2024, be advised there's nothing to worry about. If you're listening to this after April 8th, hey, you're still here. There was nothing to worry about. So what is a solar eclipse? What's the big deal? Well, basically it's when the moon, the earth, and the sun align, and the moon is between the earth and the sun. So when we're trying to look at the sun, we can't see it, we see the moon. Basically, that means the moon casts a small shadow on part of the earth as it passes, we pass through that lineup. So a full eclipse is 100% blockage of the sun for those people who are in the shadow of the moon, okay? A partial eclipse is where they don't line up exactly and the moon doesn't cover the whole sun for anybody on the earth. So it's all on your perspective depending on where on the globe you are, okay? Now, I don't understand really why this hype is going on this year, but since 1901, there have been 228 total eclipses on the earth. Total darkness. Again, only in those portions where the shadow of the moon is covering those people that are on the earth. So in 79 years during the last 124, 79 of those 124 years, there have been two eclipses. So it's not a new thing. It's not a surprise. It's not crazy. It's nothing strange, okay? The longest eclipse was December 14th, 1955, and it lasted 12 minutes and 9 seconds. Now, Google's a great tool, but they will deliberately hide things and lie to you. So if you first Google how long an eclipse can last, this is what it says, quote, 7 minutes, 32 seconds. The longest historical total eclipse lasted 7 minutes and 27.54 seconds on June 15th, 743 BC. So based off of that information, Google says, again, quote, the longest eclipse theoretically possible is 7 minutes and 32 seconds. End quote. However, if you Google how long was the eclipse on December 14th, 1955, you find out it was 12 minutes and 9 seconds. So don't believe everything you see on the internet, okay? If the longest is 7 minutes, how did we get a 12-minute eclipse in 1955? So you have to be diligent when you search for things on the internet, and you have to search various sources. You can't just trust the first thing that pops up, okay? They will deliberately lie to you, and they will deliberately hide some things to try and fit their narrative. Now, the second thing is, does God use signs and wonders in heaven like eclipses and things? Well, yeah, absolutely. Look at his birth, a star that signaled to the wise men that he would be born. And so they traveled. So we're talking at least months, possibly years in advance. They saw this sign in the heavens that was an indication that a king would be born in Jerusalem, and it was the king of all kings. Now, how they got that from a star, I'm sorry, I'm not smart enough to understand. Okay? But God used a star, and it stood over where Jesus was born, right? Now, there's another one in Joshua where the sun stood still for a day, an additional 12 hours of sunlight. Joshua 10, 13, and 14, and the sun stood still and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down about a whole day. So I'm not going to say 24 hours or 12 exactly, but the sun stood still and there was many hours of extra light. Verse 14, and there was no day like that before it or after it that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. That's a miracle. God used the star in our solar system, the sun, to help the people on earth. One particular nation during one particular battle for one whole day. I mean, that's insane. I have no idea of the physics behind that, but it was clearly a miracle that God did. And then there was darkness for 3 hours while Jesus was on the cross. Some people say this was an eclipse. Now, I don't believe it, but it could have been. God could have used one, right? I believe it was God turning away from his son, and the Bible says God is the source of true light in the universe. In Genesis, there was light before God even created the sun. And also in Revelation, the Bible says there is no sun because God provides the light and it's always daytime. In Matthew 27:45, it says, now from the 6th hour, this is when Jesus was hanging on the cross, there was darkness over all the land unto the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? That's why I think what I do. Okay? It was over that land, apparently. It says over all the land. I guess it could be the whole earth. I don't know. But that does not sound like an eclipse. It sounds like God made it dark because he turned away from his son. Again, we'll have to ask God about that in heaven, but clearly God used darkness across the land, right? Now, I'm not going to go on and on, but there are dozens of these examples in the Bible. God created the universe. He is literally a star breather. So sometimes God uses his creation to explain things to us, to warn us of things, or to judge us, to bring judgment. And that is why people talk about this eclipse. There is a judgment of darkness at the end times. Matthew 24, verse 29 and 30. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, that's Jesus. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and glory. So, first of all, everyone talking about the eclipse with this verse has got it wrong. This is clearly after the time of the 7-year tribulation. It says immediately after the tribulation of those days, the great and powerful day of the Lord. That's the 7-year tribulation. I did a whole series on the end times in season 2, 10 episodes, starting with episode 17, if you want to go back and listen to it. If you read the context, Matthew 24, 29, and 30 is clearly the coming of Jesus to destroy the armies at the Battle of Armageddon and to set up his 1,000-year reign and bring the saints from heaven with him. That's what that's talking about. And to gather up all the saints of the earth to be in his 1,000-year kingdom. Nowhere is this proof of an eclipse. Eclipses do not darken the entire earth. Only precise locations on a very small part of the earth for just a few seconds or minutes. The earth is too big for the moon to cast a shadow that covers the whole thing. So I want you guys to be cautious about the warnings in the Bible about people who prophesy what is to come. First of all, nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. Nobody knows when Jesus is coming. If they claim to, they are lying. They are a false prophet. So people who say, I know Jesus is coming during this solar eclipse in 2024 on April 8th, they are liars. All right, Matthew 24, 36 to 44. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So if the eclipse were Jesus coming back, nobody would be talking about it. Nobody would know. The eclipse would happen, and suddenly Jesus would be there, and people would freak out and be like, whoa, didn't expect that. So people expecting it and planning for it, and like, this is insane. And if you keep reading, in verse 42, watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. Does anyone know what hour the eclipse is? Yeah, scientifically, they've proven it. They're ready for it. So that's pretty accurate. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be you also ready, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. So it's when you're confident that Jesus is not coming back, that's when he'll come back. So beware of false prophets. Matthew 7:15 says that very clearly. And Deuteronomy 18:21. And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? How do we know a false prophet, basically? Verse 22. When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. But the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. Don't be afraid of these prophets. Don't listen to them. So what happens when a preacher gathers a large following of unbelievers, people who were not in the church, don't know about God? What happens when a preacher gets a large following of these people because of something he prophesied, like this eclipse? And then he promises it will happen, something great or terrible will happen, and it doesn't. Well, those people either become fanatical followers of that man and make excuses for his failures, and you get a cult following, or they realize he's a charlatan, they turn away from God, and they think that the God of the Bible has lied to them. So people who prophesy the future and claim to know what's going to happen, you should be very afraid of. They are false prophets. Many false prophets, especially in countries like America that allow freedom of speech and give zero consequences when somebody lies. Okay. So I didn't say that sentence properly, but you understand that we have more false prophets in America than probably anywhere else because we have freedom of speech. So understand that and kind of tune yourself to the Bible instead of to all the chatter that you hear in the world today. If you're listening to somebody who has promised something because of this eclipse, when it didn't happen, that proves they're a false prophet. You need to stop listening to them. Delete them from your favorites. Stop following them on social media. Why would you let a false prophet continue to influence your life? Now, there's tons of verses. You should look these up. If you're listening to somebody who's promised something during the eclipse, write these down. 2 Timothy 4, verse 5. The entire chapters of Jeremiah 14 and 23. Mark 13:22, 2 Peter 2:3, Matthew 7:21. Beware of these people. Listen, guys, solar eclipses happen, but never have governments issued such dire warnings and called for states of emergency over a solar eclipse. All across the state of Texas, the billboards on the highways are warning people to stay home because of the traffic and dangers of being out on the road during the eclipse. That's ludicrous. So to me, this indicates a unique knowledge by our corrupt, pedophile endorsing Jeffrey Epstein government. Do you think that knowledge, special knowledge, comes from God to these people? No. I wouldn't be surprised if something terrible is perpetrated by our government during the eclipse, or if they cause general chaos and disruption of people's lives. But that doesn't mean that I can prophesy that it's going to happen. So understand that. It's not a big, scary event from God. It's an awesome event from God. God uses the stars and astronomical events to help his people, to warn his people, and to judge people on the earth. There's no way to know in the last 100 years if this 229th full eclipse is the one from God. Okay, they happen all the time. Can God do something? Of course. Will God do something? I don't know. Should we prepare for something? Yes. There's 2 points about that. Number 1 is the spiritual and number 2 is the physical. Number 1, believers in Jesus should prepare their hearts and be ready every day. That should be a no-brainer. Wise people should always be prepared. That's number 2, to take care of their families and not rely on government or other people like grocery stores, food, water, a way to defend yourself, guns. You know what Jesus said, the last thing he told his disciples pretty much was, if you don't have a sword, go buy one. Listen, I've seen lots of false prophecies concerning the eclipse. I hope you didn't buy into it. I hope it makes you wiser the next time. But have hope and have courage in Jesus Christ. 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. Be happy no matter what. Proverbs 3:13. Happy is the man that finds wisdom. Be wise about this, guys. 1 Peter 3:14. Sanctify God in your hearts. Do not be afraid of the terror of human beings. Ecclesiastes 5:18 and 19. Be thankful for what God has given you and enjoy it. Psalm 27:1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Have courage, be happy, be content with what you have, and enjoy the life God gave you. Until next time, may God bless you.